Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss why the government are only releasing potentially half of the coronavirus figures for the UK. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, even with the figures as published each day, it's clear that the UK is now going to be the hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic in Europe. We had longer than most other large nations to prepare and had more information on which measures were and were not working around the world. But still, we failed to learn from the hard lessons that the other major powers of Europe had been demonstrating. So now, at the point at which I'm recording this, there are over 11,000 deaths recorded in the UK. Very likely that'll have got to over 12,000 by the time you're watching it. And we're steadily catching up to France in the international league table that nobody, frankly, wants to feature in. Except we're probably ahead of France, and potentially by some margin. This is because the deaths recorded in France represent the actual numbers of people who've died from the coronavirus infection. This is not the case in the UK. It only records the number of people who have died in hospital. But people are dying at home and in care homes. At the start of the week, the chief medical officer said that the coronavirus had been known or suspected to have infected 13.5% of our care homes. And these are bastions for the most vulnerable, the ones who were supposed to get the most protection. Even when the Prime Minister was banging on about herd immunity, we were still supposed to be protecting the elderly. And what is being done to protect the residents and workers at those care homes affected? As far as I can tell, nothing. Just keep following the measures that have already failed to protect them, it seems is the case. And the especially worrying thing really is that countries in Europe that are counting all coronavirus deaths in their figures say that about half of them are occurring in care homes. These include figures from Spain, Italy, France and Ireland. In other words, all of whom are countries that are similar to ours. They've got lockdowns in place, none of whom have been ordering non-resuscitation orders for elderly care home residents either, unlike in the UK. Now, there's no suggestion that this is currently the case in Britain. If it were, then our real death toll would be over 22,000 and rivaling that of the United States, who have a population 5 times the size of ours. That being said, I don't know what is different about care homes in the UK that would mean we have a much lower proportion of deaths occurring in care homes than comparable nearby nations. I mean, if you were going to say that we employed measures much earlier, then maybe you'd make an argument. But actually, we employed measures later than those other nations in terms of where we are on the curve. So why are the government refusing to count all coronavirus deaths in the figures? Sure, if you exclude some of the data, then the numbers will of course be lower and by extension look better. And that's what they've done with unemployment figures, for example. Find reasons to not include loads of people without gainful employment as unemployed, and you make the figures look great. That trickery worked well about a year ago. In fact, it worked rather too well, and it actually looked like they were trying to say that unemployment was into negative figures, as if not only was everyone in the country actually employed, but a load of the deceased must also have been in employment as well. But although the methodology being used for the coronavirus victim counting is the same, I don't think the reasoning is quite so simple. My worry is that there's a more cunning aim to allow the government to justify reducing lockdown measures before they really should. Bear in mind that the lockdown was only announced under severe pressure. Boris Johnson and the bulk of his cabinet were not at all in favour of it and are still not in favour of it. Indeed, the Prime Minister and other senior members of the government have been flouting the measures themselves to almost great cost in the case of Boris Johnson. And why would Michael Gove have been out running in public while he was supposed to be in isolation if not for the fact that these cabinet ministers simply do not believe in the seriousness of the situation? Now, the situation is as follows. They don't want the lockdown in place, but they can't remove it until they have some justification for doing so. The justification will come from the figures. Until the rate of deaths is falling, they won't have those figures. So if you just count hospital deaths, then that fall will happen much sooner. This is because patients in hospital are getting the best care and have the best chance of recovery. This means that it will look like the country's death rate is falling, when in reality it will still be rising. Now, I have to point out that at this point, it is still rising, but there is going to come a point where it's going to level off and then start falling, maybe in the next couple of weeks. But the situation is that in the country as a whole, it could actually still be rising and we'll be none the wiser. And they may then use this as an excuse to end the lockdown, or at least massively ease back on it. And the worry then would be that we'd get a much, another increase, a massive spike, in fact, as the infections get out. And I know it's a little bit like, going on a diet, you scale back and you go on a diet and you start to lose weight. You think, oh, great, my weight's coming down. I can start eating like a pig again. It's not how it works. I can assure you that from experience. But that may well be what they're thinking. And I hope I'm wrong about it. I do hope that this is just the government so used to lying that it is fiddling the figures purely out of habit. Like they always say, never ascribe to malice that which could be explained by incompetence, and it could just be a case of that. But if the intention is to ease the measures before it's wise to do so, well, then we are all in trouble. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.